My favorite part of the Christmas story, and I'm a history guy. Like I like the history, I like the politics. If I'm reading a book, which I do read a lot of books, that's probably my favorite pastime. Board games and reading, that's my pastimes. But I like the history, I like the politics, I like adventure. That's my thing. Drama and romance and angst, not so much. And whenever you go through the nativity story, a good chunk of it is drama and romance and angst. And I'm like, okay, this is necessary and this is good, but that's not my favorite story. But then we get to my favorite part of the story, and it's the stuff I like. It's the political stuff, there's history, and it all comes together. And so we're going to focus on what I like about the Christmas story today. And that's one of the benefits of being the guy that's talking, is that we get to focus on what I like. But we're going to look at the part of the Christmas story that doesn't happen at Christmas. And that's from Matthew chapter 2, if you didn't figure that out when I started to read the wrong thing to the kids earlier today. And that's with the wise men. And I just want to, this is the part that gets told incorrectly. This is the part that doesn't happen at Christmas. This is the part that whenever you set out the nativity set, I resist moving the wise men like somewhere else across the globe because they don't go there. And there's not three of them, like all of these things that happen. But I just want to set this up for you, because what we're going to be talking about today is about the wise men and what they understood about the birth of Jesus that most of us don't get, what the people there at the time didn't get, and about what happened there. So the wise men come in at a really politically fragile time. And you might think, who cares about a politically fragile time? They're just three guys on camels with crowns. Like, who cares about it? Like, that's not what's going on. That's not who they are. So 30 years before the birth of Jesus, there's something really interesting that happens in Israel at the time. So Israel, if you can think about a map of Israel, you got let's see if I can flip this around in my head. You got the Mediterranean Sea, and you got the Middle East, and you got Israel right there on the border of the Mediterranean Sea, and you got Europe on the north, and you got Africa on the bottom. But you got Israel right this little slit, and it looks like there's a whole bunch of land, except that's all desert over here, right? And the only really way to get from Europe or Asia, and this looks right in my head and it's backwards in yours, just understand, I understand geography, but it's backwards, is to go down through Israel and that area to get down into Africa. So this is valuable land if you're a European empire or if you're an Asian empire. And I know as an American that we were all taught the only thing that existed in the world is the Roman Empire, right? China did not exist. There was nothing going on in India. Nothing is happening in the world except the Roman Empire, and that is all completely wrong, okay? It's all completely wrong. There's a lot of other stuff going on. But for our purposes today, I just want to tell you about one thing. There's another empire that borders on Rome that's the size of Rome that's constantly fighting with Rome. Okay, that's what's going on. It's called the Parthian Empire. They're right up against that. And 30 years before the birth of Jesus, they're fighting over Israel. Rome controls it. They had taken over. They have a vassal kingdom there in Israel. But what the Parthian Empire does, because they want that strip to be able to get to Africa, what they do is they have a coup. They set up another king and they have him take over. And it's really fast, takes over really fast. They kill all the royal family and they set up a puppet king there to control Israel. And they control it for about 5 years. And so Rome is trying to figure out what to do. They're not really in a position to send their armies to go and take over. But there's one guy that really wants to take it back. He is not a member of the royal family. He is not a powerful guy. If anything, like if you would equate him in today's terms, he's like an assistant treasury secretary. Like if you were to look at like where he falls in the government, he's nothing. He's in the government, but not really anything. His name is Herod. He doesn't matter. But he goes to the Roman emperor, he goes to the Roman Senate, and he says, hey, at this point, there's not an emperor. He goes to this whole thing, and he's like, hey, I really want to take this back. And they said, fine, take it back if you can, but we can't support this. We don't have the money. We don't have the armies. Go take it if you can. They said, well, I've got to face down the Parthian Empire by myself. I can't do this. And they said, well, we can't do this for you. You've got to do this. But they give him permission to become king of this area if he can figure it out. So he gets together the money privately. He gets together the armies privately to go and take this back. And the Roman Senate does something that nobody has ever done before. They create a new title called the King of the Jews. King of the Jews, never existed before. And so they say to Herod, if you can go capture this area, it's yours, but we're not doing it for you. So he gets it all together, this assistant treasury secretary, and he goes over, manages to capture Israel, becomes Herod the Great, King of the Jews. And Rome is like, great, we're so glad this worked out, now pay us taxes. And it becomes part of the Roman Empire. The Parthians lose it. They're not able to take it back because Rome, once he has it, Rome sends armies to help secure it, but it's his kingdom and he rules there for the rest of his life. He becomes Herod the Great. He goes from being assistant treasury secretary to king. The Jews hate him. They never like him. He's not really a Jew at all. He's a converted Jew. They never like him, but they just went through 2 wars of conquest where tons of people died, tons of people lost their wealth, tons of people lost property. They don't want to do it again. They hate him for the rest of his life, but they don't want to fight again. And that's the situation that exists when the wise men come in. Now, the wise men are not just kings from the east that ride in on camels and they're like, here's some gifts, and they take off and leave. But they're the Magi. And that's important because it's not like magic people. It's not magicians. But the Magi are the advisors to the Parthian emperor. That's what they are. They're the bureaucratic class. They're the diplomatic class. If the Parthian emperor is going to send an ambassador somewhere, he sends the Magi. If you want to know where these people came from, if you know anything about Daniel in the lion's den, right? Daniel, who was a wise man, who was the one that would advise and rule over things for the Babylonian emperor and then the Medes and the Persians. If you know anything about that, he was one of the wise men. The wise men eventually become the Magi. They're this ruling class right under the emperor. And so the reason that they even know about this is because when Daniel was there, he incorporates all the Jewish prophecies into the things that the Magi, the wise men, study. He brings all these Jewish prophecies like Isaiah and Ezekiel. He brings all this stuff into their culture. And all this stuff becomes Zoroastrianism, which is still a religion you can study today. You shouldn't do that, but you can study it if you want to. It becomes Zoroastrianism, and these Magi are people that when they show up, you assume that they're speaking on behalf of the Parthian emperor. So what happens is these Magi who are part of this diplomatic class, they're all studying the writings that Daniel left for them. They study the book of Daniel. They study the book of Isaiah. They study the book of Ezekiel. They study the book of Jeremiah. They have all these things along with all their astrology and all the other books that they study, all the things that they bring in from India, all the things that they bring in from China. They study all these books of prophecy from everywhere else. And they put together their religion, and one of the things that they study is this prophesied king that's coming, that this God from the west, as they think of it, is going to send this king that's going to come. And they study this, and they look in the sky, and for the first time ever, astrology works, and they see that it's time for this Messiah to be born. And we don't know how all that works out, but they come from the east, and they show up to Herod. But Herod doesn't know that what's happening is that these guys are just actually true believers that show up. What he sees is ambassadors from the Parthian Empire show up to do something that they just tried to do 30 years ago. So what I want to read to you is this story that gets me, I love this story. Because what's happening is you've got 2 empires coming together in this one place where they just came together 30 years before. And it really explains why he did what he did. So let's jump in Matthew chapter 2, starting in verse 1. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king. So we're not talking the night Jesus was born. It wasn't like Mary had Jesus, they wrap him up in swaddling clothes, lay him in a manger, the little drummer boy comes in, like 3 guys on camp. That's not what happens. Within 2 years, so Jesus is a toddler at this point, somewhere along those lines. So after these days, Jesus is born, Herod the king, behold, wise men, that's Magi from the east, come to Jerusalem saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. Now, these guys took vacation, right? They took personal time. They took PTO from the court of the Parthian Empire to come over here and do personal worship time. But all Herod sees is the same people that overthrew this kingdom last time showed up. And this time what they asked for is somebody who has a title that nobody has ever had but me before. The Roman Senate made this title up for me. And now they're back to find another king. And this time they're going to use the Messiah. They're going to use Jewish prophecy to prop him up and overthrow me again. He doesn't see true believers coming to worship. He sees a political plot to take his kingdom. Verse 3, when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. They should have heard, hey, the Messiah is here. The Messiah is here, and we're excited about this. But he hears, this is a political threat. They're getting ready to have another coup, because last time they showed up and said, hey, this is the actual king, and we're going to support the actual legitimate king, and they overthrew. And this time they're saying it again. And the people all hear not, hey, the Messiah is here, the one that's been predicted to be born, the one that's going to rescue us is here. They hear, another war? These two empires are going to clash right here where we are again? Everyone is troubled. Everyone hears the Messiah is going to be born. Everyone is worried. They should want the Messiah, but they don't want the Messiah because the fulfillment of prophecy just means for them more trouble. It means more death. It means more loss, and they don't want it. Assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. And they told him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. So he went to them, he said, where is he supposed to be born? And they said, that's easy. He's supposed to be born in Bethlehem. There's a prophecy that he would be born in Bethlehem, this little bitty town. This narrows it down. It's not like he was supposed to be born in the metropolis of Jerusalem. He's supposed to be born in this little bitty village. This is why it was important that the government do something ridiculous and crazy like make everybody travel all over the place, because they lived in Nazareth and had to travel across the country for a week to get to this little bitty town called the House of Bread, so that the bread of life would be born in this little bitty place. He said they're going to be born in Bethlehem. Then verse 7, Herod summoned the wise men secretly. Didn't tell anybody else what was going on, and ascertained from them the time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child, and when you found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him. Now, I don't believe for a second that they bought this. I don't believe for a second that they thought Herod was going to show up and worship. I don't believe for a second that they said King of the Jews, incidentally, that they were ignorant enough to know about this. They're part of the political class. They understand all of this. But I also don't believe that they were willing to cause an international incident over this. They're on PTO, right? They're just on their day off trying to do their own religious thing. They don't have permission to come over here and cause a problem with this guy. So he says, I want to come and do this. It's his kingdom, whatever he wants to do. So he says, I want to come and worship him too. They don't necessarily believe him, but they're like, whatever. You do you. And in verse 9, after listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until they came to rest over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. In verse 11, and going into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way, which is difficult, by the way, because the only way to get there is around this big desert. And if you're going to go another way, you got to find another way. So is that going south and taking a boat? Is it slipping around through the desert? How are you doing this? I don't know. But God warned them, hey, don't go back and tell them where he is. Go another way. But this story ends tragically because there's another prophecy. The prophecy was that Rachel would weep over her children in this area because about what was about to happen. And Herod, when he realizes that the Magi have gone another direction, murders every boy child under 2 years old in this area. The reason the gold is so important is because they have to use the gold to survive in Egypt. They flee and live in Egypt for the next 3 to 4 years while they wait for Herod to die before they're finally able to come back. This story matters, and it's politically significant, but this is the clash of two empires in one place. And you don't get that from the nativity set, right? This is a big deal that this all comes together. But I want to tell you something about these three gifts, because these three gifts are really, really significant, and they tell us something that the wise men understood that we don't get. Right? You read gold, frankincense, and myrrh, you think those are weird gifts to bring to a baby shower, but it's Jesus and everything is weird. So, what difference does it make? Three gifts, but these three gifts are significant. Gold. Gold is always given, first of all, gold is just gold. We think gold, it's money, it's wealth, whatever. But gold is always listed first. If you go back and read through the Old Testament, or you look at ancient, if you go back and you're one of those weird people like me that look at ancient Eastern court records and look at what a delegation to a king always brought, the thing that they always bring is gold to a king. Because gold symbolizes kingship. When you're going to go meet a king for the first time, what you do to symbolize that you respect his authority is you bring him gold. You don't bring gold to a baby, but you bring gold to a king. They understood the prophecies that were left to them about Jesus and who he was. In Isaiah chapter 9, starting in verse 6, this is what it says about Jesus. And these were the prophecies that they had that they understood about who he was. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be on his shoulders. And his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. That he is not just a baby, but that he is a king. They understand that he is king. They honor him as king. They show him respect as a king. They don't just show up and pay him words like, hey, we've heard there's King of the Jews born. But they recognize that he is a king, not just any king, not just a king, because kings are born all the time at this point. Like every time a king has a son, hey, here's a future king right here. But hundreds of years before this, that God had planned to send a specific king, and that this king will be different, that this king will be sent by God specifically, that he will be called something special, that he himself will be recognized as God, mighty God, a wonderful counselor, as an everlasting father, as a prince of peace. Verse 7, that of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end, that his government will not be a short-term government that just sits in its own place, but that his government will grow and expand and bring peace to the entire world on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. And the zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this, that God himself will expand his kingdom. That the gold represents the fact that they recognize that he is something different, that he is a king, but more than just an earthly king, but that he is the king over all, sent by God. And these representatives of one of the two major empires on earth at the time came to bow down before him and recognize his authority over everything else. They offered him frankincense. Frankincense, I don't know if you've ever dealt with frankincense at all, but frankincense is not just a spice. It's a weird thing to give a baby. It's a really weird thing to give a baby, because frankincense is a spice used in worship. If you go back to the Old Testament, if you can make it through Leviticus, I know most of you start in Genesis and you read Exodus and then you get to Leviticus and you're done reading, right? You just quit right there in Leviticus. But if you go through and read the description of the worship and how they actually worship him, frankincense is used in the incense offering, the offerings of the prayers that go up before God as an offering of worship constantly. That's incense that's used in that. It's a description of worship. So when they bring him incense, they're not just giving him a valuable spice, they're presenting him with worship and recognizing him as someone that needs to be worshiped. He's not just a king, but he's God. And this is what it says in Isaiah chapter 60, verse 6. This is a specific prophecy about what's going to happen with the Messiah. A multitude of camels shall cover you, the young camels of Midian and Ephah. All those from Sheba shall come, and they shall bring gold and frankincense. And they shall bring good news and the praises of Yahweh, the Lord, all caps, Yahweh. They recognize that he is worthy of worship, that he's not just a king, but as it said in that earlier passage, that he is the mighty God. That they don't just see a little baby, but they travel all this way to present worship to him. And then they offer him myrrh. This is the most disturbing thing you could possibly offer to a baby. Okay, because myrrh is a death spice. When they wrapped Jesus with 75 pounds of spices at his death, the primary spice they use is myrrh. Myrrh is always used to prepare the dead. Now, myrrh is a death spice. You can use it for other things. But if I give you olive oil, you're going to put it in the kitchen, right? You can use it for other things, but it's for cooking. You're going to put it in the kitchen. If you need it for something else, you'll go get it for something else. But it's for cooking. And myrrh is the same way. You might use it for something else, but it's a death spice. Like, I want you to imagine that I show up, you just had a baby, I show up to your house, and I bring you a coffin. Like, he's going to need it one day, right? I don't want to be weird, but I figure nobody else brought you one. Like, you're going to just put it in the attic. One day, he's going to, I'm sure he's going to be a long way away, but one day he's going to need this. I'm just trying to be thoughtful. Bringing myrrh is the same thing as bringing a coffin because it's representative of death. And they recognized this about this baby from the prophecies, that he would be king, that he was worthy of worship, and that he was prepared for death. This is what it says in Isaiah chapter 53, verses 7 through 9. This is describing the Messiah, that he was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to slaughter, and like a sheep that is before its shears is silent, so he opened not his mouth. Verse 8, by oppression and judgment he was taken away, and as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, stricken for the transgressions of my people? And they made his grave with the wicked and with a rich man in his death, although he had done no violence and there was no deceit in his mouth. Like, for Mary to get this, right? I just want you to imagine someone bringing a coffin to your baby shower. This is the same reaction. But these men understood something about this baby, that he was come to be king, he was come to be God, he was come to die as a sacrifice for the people of God. And when they came to worship, it wasn't just to worship. It wasn't just to bow down. It was to understand that he was a sacrifice prepared for many. And there was something that they didn't get from the prophecies. They understood that he was there to be king. They understood that he was there to be worshiped. They understood that he was there to die, but they did not understand something else. That death would not be his end. There was no fourth gift. They didn't understand this from Isaiah chapter 53, verses 10 and 11. It was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief, and when his soul makes an offering for guilt, he will see his offspring. He will prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hands, that though he would die, he would still see all those that were saved because of his death. That though he would die, his days would be prolonged. Verse 11, out of the anguish of his soul, he would see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, may make many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Though he would die, many would be saved because of it, and he would still see it. They got that he was king, that he was God, that he was a sacrifice. But they did not get that though he would die, he would still live. There was no fourth gift. And the problem is that many people are like the wise men. Many people get at Christmas that Jesus is king, right? We're willing to sing songs about Jesus being a king. We're willing to bring Jesus gifts about being king. We'll show up to church about Christmas and we'll sing some songs. Jesus is king, sure. Jesus shows up, we'll bow down. Sure, we'll be king. We'll worship Jesus, right? Let's sing some songs, let's give some money, we'll worship Jesus. We even understand that Jesus is a sacrifice. We'll thank God. We'll ask for forgiveness. But what many people miss is that Jesus is not just the sacrifice, but he is the only hope you have for eternity. And that what you need is not just a king, not just someone to worship, not just someone to be sacrificed on your behalf, but someone to place your entire hope and trust in. And if all you offer him is authority over your life, all you offer him is worship, all you offer him is prayer and seek some forgiveness, but you don't place your full and complete hope and trust in him, then you have missed it. If all you offer is 3 gifts and you don't trust in him for eternity, you don't trust in him to save you, then you have missed it. The wise men could read the prophecies and see all these things that Mary and Joseph maybe didn't understand. Maybe they didn't get the full thing. The people of Jerusalem understood that the Messiah was there and they were disturbed by it and really wanted to kick that can down the road for a while. Herod saw it and saw it as a threat to his power. The wise men got that this was significant and knew there was a sacrifice coming, but they didn't trust or understand the resurrection. And that this wasn't just about constant forgiveness through an old sacrificial system, but a hope of a new life through trusting in him. And if you haven't placed your faith in him, if you haven't recognized that he is your hope for everything, but that requires all of you trusting in him, then you're like the wise men. And you've missed it too. So it's Christmas. And I'm excited for you. I'm excited for you to eat some food. I'm excited for you to open some gifts. I'm not one of those guys like, it's not about presents. Like, open you some presents. Have a great time. I hope you gave some good gifts. I hope you get some good gifts. I hope all of that. But if you make Christmas about Jesus and then move on to something else when you're done, then you are missing the point. Because my whole life is about Jesus. Because I am dead without him. I live only because of him. And it's not about 1 day or 2 days or a month, but it's about every day. If it's about 1 day for you or 1 week for you, it's about asking for some forgiveness once in a while or giving a little bit of money here or there, then you have missed the point. Because I am dead in my sins and trespasses without him. I am dead forever. I am guilty. But because of him, I live. Not 1 day, not when I die in the future, but right now I live, and my whole life is about him. And if your whole life is not about him, then you have either missed the point or you've not placed your faith in him. So this Christmas, I ask you to receive the gift that he's offered you. And if you've already received it, then understand what it is that you've received and take it seriously. Would you stand with me? Our Heavenly Father, we come before you, and I'm so grateful for the gift that you've offered us, for the understanding that the wise men had, Lord, even when an incomplete understanding, Lord, and I'm grateful for the chance to be able to complete that last step. I'm grateful to be able to be here 2,000 and however many years later, Lord, to be able to have the privilege of being able to look back on the Scriptures with a fuller understanding than they had, and to be able to stand here on the shoulders of many others who've come before me, to be able to hear the gospel and understand it. And I ask, Lord, that if there's any here who doesn't understand it, who does not take in that final step to trust in you, not just to recognize who you are, to have a head knowledge of who you are, and to not have placed their faith in you, Lord, I ask that they would take that step. And for those in the room who have placed their faith in you, but they've not recognized the gravity of that, and that what you deserve from them is their entire life, I ask that they would take that step to offer it all to you today. I thank you, Lord. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.